What's up, dudes? Zoe Rose here and Burrito. And today I kind of wanted to do a quick little haircut and I completely forgot to mute my TV. I was watching Law and Order and yeah, so now you guys get a voiceover. So here we go. I'm going to kind of do something a little bit more convex today. So this is going to be a layered kind of bob that's going to follow the head shape. So for sectioning, I'm going to start out by finding the apex. And as you can see, that little comb trick that I did there for you, that is going to show us where the head starts to round. So the apex is the high point of the head. So that's where we want to find that first mark. We're going to take a section vertically straight down to the top of the ear. So once we get those sections groomed in and away from the face, we're going to section off our back zone and take a center guide from the apex all the way to the center nape. As you're taking your guide, what you're going to want to do is follow the head shape. So for me, because the hair on this doll head previously had a very layered cut, I wanted my guide to start from the shortest point that was already on the doll head. So you can start this at the top of your guide or at the bottom. It doesn't really matter. I'm following the head shape using a vertical subsection, and every time I cut, I'm just moving 90 degrees from wherever this hair lives. So I'm elevating it straight out and following that head shape. So if you were to imagine the expanded version of this, think of Hellraiser. You know, Pinhead has all those pins sticking out 90 degrees. So that would be kind of like what you want to imagine for this haircut. So in the back here, I'm using a traveling guide. Everything is going into the previous section. So traveling from section 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3. As I'm working this, once I get to the rounds of the head, then it will become stationary. So let's say I had 4 subsections, I'm going to become stationary at 5, for example. Always remember to do a cross check. So when I go in and I take the opposite section of how I cut, I need to make sure that I'm taking the same elevation at which I cut. So always remember that when you're doing a cross check. Opposite section of how you cut, in the same elevation at which you cut. That's how you do a proper cross check. I'm going to repeat the same technique on the other side. So vertical subsections throughout, everything is coming into the previous subsection, and I'm following that head shape using a convex layer. Depending on your background, you may have heard this referred to as a contour layer, I believe some people might call it. All you're doing is following the head shape, whatever you want to call it, it don't matter. Different strokes for different folks. Just make sure you have consistent tension, make sure your elevation and over direction is consistent. And if you're going to be like me and stop and watch SVU in the process, just make sure you don't cut your knuckles off. So now, as we're moving into the top zone, we are going to take a center subsection for that top, and we're using a little sliver of our already cut hair from the back as our guide. So I'm following the head shape moving forward, but I do want to get slightly triangular because I'm going to work with a fringe area through the front. So I haven't decided how short I want to take that yet, so I want to make sure I leave a little bit of extra room. So through the front, we're going to be working with a stationary guide. The back was a traveling guide. The front is going to be stationary. So everything on the front is going to be pulled straight up to the center. So we're going to take our horizontal subsections from the apex forward, and all of those are going to come straight up into that center subsection. Like I said, this doll head was pretty layered before, so you can see the further I'm getting down on the head, the less hair I'm cutting off. Might want to throw your comb for good luck there. Don't know if any of you guys caught that. Keep that consistent tension. Make sure as you're grooming your subsections, everything is nice and taut. That way you have less wiggle room for error. Now we're gonna get into our blow dry. So I'm starting with a wrap dry technique, and this is gonna help make the hair as skinny as possible, and it's gonna help ensure that I can get the hair to lay very flat for when I go into refine. So I'm using a small paddle brush, and I took the nozzle off my blow dryer to kind of disperse the air a little bit more evenly throughout everything so it'll dry a little bit faster. Once I've flattened out everything to the best of my ability, again, this is a doll head, so their hairlines are a little bit fussy. I'm going to go in and take a diagonal back subsection from the front center to the center nape, and I'm going to switch to my vest brush, and then I'm going to use a leafing and beveling technique. This is going to help stretch out the hair as much as humanly possible to get it to lay nice and flat, so that way it won't have any weird bumps or kinks when I go to refine the cut. And then if you forget to plug your flat iron in and have to wait for it to get hot, just have some hummus because it's snack time. Say hi to your dog and dance it out a little bit, you know. That SVU theme song though. All right, flat iron is nice and hot. So we're going to take those same they're not vertical subsections, they're diagonal back. We're going to take those diagonal back subsections and we're going to run our iron through it. I'm pretty sure I didn't rinse out the conditioner all the way in this doll head, so you might see a little bit of steam, but whatever, she's fine. Polish off those ends with a slight bevel. Now remember, you don't want this to be super curled at the very ends. A lot of times people get a little confused and their doll heads end up looking like a newscaster. We don't want that. We just want a nice little bevel. We want some polished ends, and we want to make sure that everything is ready to be refined. So once I've ironed everything, I'm going to go in around the front to create a little bit of face framing that matches the side of the fringe. I want to do this before I cut the length because I haven't decided how short I want to cut that length yet. Given that this haircut is based off of something that was previously layered, I want to make sure that I don't run the risk of having it be too short in the back and not long enough in the front to support it. I don't know if that makes sense, but you'll see here I'm going to go in and I see that little gap from where it was overly layered before, and I'm going to match my length for my actual perimeter using that. So once I figured out that length, I can go in and finish my refinement. So I'm going to match the other side with some face framing as well. Utilize a slide cutting technique on either side. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go through the back. Now that I have that line put in there, I want to kind of break it up because this doll head has a ton of density around the hairline, which is abnormal in a real person. So for this, I'm going in and slide cutting and then doing a nice kind of heavy point cut for the very ends to give it a little bit of space and movement. This might not be necessary on a real person because the hairline tends to be a lot less dense in actuality, but for this being a doll head, she's thick or whatever, gotta do it. So now that I'm happy with that external shape, I'm going to go through and take some horizontal subsections through the top, and I'm just going to point cut into it slightly. The reason I'm doing this is because I want the ends to have a little bit more movement. If you imagine shaking up a full water bottle, it doesn't really move much, but then you pour out some of the water or you drink it, there's a little bit more movement with the water when you shake it next time. So think about that when you're point cutting. Next, I'm going to go in and start my fringe area. So what I'm going to do here is take a kind of a pinch out of the center and slide cut to create the start of my guide. Then I'm going to go in and put my comb in wide side And I'm going to angle it down and out towards the cheek so it can get slightly longer to frame the face. I'm using the points of my scissors to not create a super straight line, and I'm just going to create a nice kind of strong line, but not as strong as if I were to blunt cut it. Once I'm happy with the length there, I'm going to go through, take a vertical subsection, and I'm just going to point cut into the ends as if I were doing kind of a flat layer. I don't want to take too much length off because I'm happy with that length, but again, I just want to create that movement in the fringe area. Vertical subsections, everything's coming up to the center, and I'm kind of just taking off a little peak of weight that was left throughout. And that's pretty much it, guys. Lots of movement, lots of texture in there. Her color is a little bit ugly, so I'm probably going to go in and take out some of the highlights that are in there because it makes the back of the haircut look a little bit flat. So once I color it all one color, I might take some pictures of her. But yeah, thanks for hanging out.